This is Kyle Gass on Tenacious D. You're listening to Without Your Head.
Welcome to the station of decapitation without your head. I'm Nasty Neal, and I'm joined by one of my favorites, actually, the original voice of Deadpool, Elliot Pete's Dragon, Ralph of Reefer Madness, and the Crypt Keeper himself, John Kassir.
Hello, kitties.
How you doing, Neal?
I'm very well. It's good to hear from you.
Good to see you.
Well, I cannot see you, but yeah, I'll be seeing you at Scarefest coming up in Lexington, Kentucky, September 29th, October 1st. That's going to be a good time.
Looking forward to it, man. That should be a lot of fun. I've been there before, but it's been a little while, and we always have a great time.
Mm-hmm. Do you have, since you started doing the conventions, do you have any experiences or memories with fans or other maybe other actors that stand out to you?
It's funny because years ago people would ask me to come to these conventions, and I would occasionally go to Comic-Con and that kind of thing because and then Comic-Con just got so big that it's the only time I've gone in the last number of years is when I was on something like Mockingbird Lane or something where the cast was plugging a show, because it's because of some huge. You kind of get lost in the sauce there, It's really more of a fun thing to go to be part of the group, the gang, as opposed to going and sitting at a table. It's just too of a mishmash of stuff. And then of course we never really realized that kids were watching Tales from the Crypt back in the day. So, boy, were we wrong. So, I mean, it makes sense to me because I although I was foreboding not to have them, I had the comic books myself as a kid, and so it was kind of neat to find that out and to find out that there was a bigger fan base for the show than there has ever been, even when the show was on the air. So. We're really excited about that. That's really cool. So I've been working on going to as many as I can go to just to give back to the fans that have been keeping the idea and the feel of Tales from the Crypt alive. I love horror myself. I was really into the Universal horror monster movies as a kid, so it's fun for me to go and see all the different horror personalities that are there. I mean, obviously, I worked with a lot of different actors, but there's always somebody there that you run into and you get to spend some time with that you haven't worked with before. That's in the part of the fraternity of horror actors, which is always a lot of fun. I remember I was in, I think, Worcester, Mass. I think I was in Rocket Shock or something, and it was a Sunday, so it was the last day, and this was when I first started doing these, a handful of years ago or so. It's got to be longer than that, but you get the picture. And this kid comes running in, and he goes, "Oh, I just got here from Canada." I go, "You're kidding me? You came all the way from Canada?" He goes, "Yeah, I need you to sign something for me." And I was like, "Well, what's that?" And he threw back his hair, and he had the Crypt Keeper tattooed on his neck. And I was like, "Oh, my God." I couldn't believe it. That was maybe the first Crypt Keeper tattoo, and it didn't surprise me that there was a Crypt Keeper tattoo because I mean I have tattoos myself, but it's a great icon to have tattooed on you, Yeah. This guy had it right on his neck. I mean, right from the jawline down to his shoulder, and he's like, "Can you sign this right here for me? I'm going to go have it tattooed." And I was like, "Awesome, dude."
Yeah, I'm sure. Like you said, it's those. There you go.
No, I was just going to say, over the years, I've started taking photos and keeping photos of all the people with the different Crypt Keeper tattoos. There's a ton of them, all different styles. Some of them funny, some of them creepy. Some of them, right off some of the photos that I've had. Some of them, completely just created by the artist who did the work for the person. But that's really kind of cool. I mean, we don't. We don't usually get that kind of situation, where you get to, get to do that kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned having the EC comics as a kid. So when you were up for the role, did you base any of your Crypt Keeper on the Crypt Keeper in the comics?
Yeah, of course. I mean, not necessarily the voice, because I base that, pretty much on what Kevin had created with the puppet. I mean, the audition was actually in Kevin Yeager's studio. So, but Kevin had put the look of the Crypt Keeper together based on the different characters from the Tales from the Crypt comic books, including the Vault Keeper and the Old Witch. So that was kind of his concept. He had done a number of different versions of him. He models them first, and then he did even some different versions full size before he came up with what he came up with. But it was funny because I'm sitting in the waiting room, and there's, Kevin didn't really have a studio set up or anything. He just had a back office where he had a boom box with a little microphone hooked up to it, But there was a lot of prestigious actors and voice actors and comedians and that type of thing that were there auditioning. And, as I came in, I could see them looking at the script and looking at all the puns and going, "Be careful what you ask for. You may get it." And they're like, "What is this shit? Nobody's going to get." It's like, "What? These are terrible. How do you sell this?" And having read the comic books, I'm like, "You guys don't get it. This guy, he loves saying this stuff. He loves, he speaks it like it's Shakespeare,
Mm-hmm.
So it was one of the reasons why I gave him, a bit of a British accent. But I could see that he had, rotting teeth and holes in his throat, so I thought I'd give it the texture, and and then these teeth and the over enunciation in order to speak through the teeth, and make it kind of juicy and that kind of thing. And I had been doing in my act as part of my stand-up for years, having won Star Search as a stand-up comedian and that kind of thing back in the 80s. I used to do, one of my signature pieces was doing The Wizard of Oz in 2.5 minutes. So I used to do, the entire thing. So I went, what? It might be fun to have him having this cackling kind of Wicked Witch of the West kind of thing going on. And that raised eyebrow thing of the Alfred Hitchcock, talking about his Alfred Hitchcock Presents series, or, I had to combine these different things as I went in. As soon as I started doing it for Kevin, he started, he didn't want to ruin the recording, but he's sitting there like shaking his head up and down going, yeah, and laughing. And he got me laughing, so I found myself laughing at my own jokes or at their own jokes that they had written. And I'm sitting there laughing at them, and I'm going, it just makes sense that this guy loves it so much he's laughing at his own jokes. And it kind of stuck right there. The next day he had me doing it for Joel Silver and Richard Donner in their office, and in their on-set office, and they gave me the job on the spot. So it was very cool.
Wow.
When we originally did it, the puppet, Kevin didn't have as much of a budget, and so he was using spare parts from his shop. He used eyes from Chucky that he had created when he made Chucky. He had some spare eyeballs, and to this day, some people don't even realize that those are Chucky eyes. But the mouth moved a little slower, and that kind of thing. So when we got in the studio and I started actually doing it, he was like, no, you got to slow it down a little bit so the puppet can keep up with it. So if you look at the first, handful of episodes, you'll see that the Crypt Keeper talks slower and more ominously. kind of thing. And his mouth just kind of, moved almost like a squirming maggot kind of thing. It was really kind of neat. I actually liked that first version of the Crypt Keeper, but it always wanted to do him faster and funnier with his stand-up type of delivery, which freed me up to do my own actual comedy delivery that I like to use. And so I got to plug a lot of myself into him at that point. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. I mean, that's really how he evolved. But definitely, there's aspects of the comic book just in the writing. They tried really hard to keep the comic book as a template for the episodes as well. I mean, if you go back and you look at some of the behind the scenes and some of the box set DVDs from some of the seasons, you'll see that it has some of us talking from behind the scenes and making fun of the actors, doing stuff like that. It's kind of fun stuff. But you can see that they're talking about how they used the comic book as storyboards for some of the episodes, because every single one of the episodes, except the very last one, the Three Pigs, which Bill Kopp did as a cartoon, was they were all based on stories from EC Comics, whether it was Tales from the Crypt, Tales from the Vault, Two-Fisted Tales. I mean, these were all comic books that William Gaines licensed to my producers. This Tales from the Crypt series for HBO. I think there were like 550 stories they could choose from. Some of them were a bit redundant, to other ones, so they didn't really do them as much. But but they still could have gone on for years with this show. But I mean, they literally took some of the frames from the comic book and used that to set up the shot. So you saw like this back of a monster in the foreground, and you just saw his hip and his bleeding hand holding a head, and somebody running off in the distance. I mean, they used that as the setup for the camera shot and that kind of thing. So they were really, really. I think one of the big successes of that show is that they were as true to the comic book as they could be.
Yeah. I don't think it gets mentioned a lot when people talk about movies or TV shows that are based off comics, because there's so many now. But I don't, even I know, Tales from the Crypt is, but I don't think a lot of people bring it up.
You mean the comic book itself, or
or even when they just talk about TV shows and movies that are based on comics, since that's so prevalent today, I don't think Tales from the Crypt a lot of times do people bring that up.
Well, I think there's a whole generation of kids that their introduction to Tales from the Crypt was the TV show. It wasn't the comic book.
Yeah.
But the reality is that, in my generation, when I was a kid, the comic book was quite, racy. I mean, it was, there were mothers that went to Congress to try to get them banned. The reason there are, age codes on the comic books to this date are because of EC Comics and Tales from the Crypt, which a lot of people don't know. Collectors know, people who are fans of that kind of thing know, but the general audience very often doesn't know. But I get a lot of, on Facebook and Twitter and that kind of thing, I get a lot of postings from people who have collections of comic books and are going, oh my God, this was one of my favorite episodes, and I found the comic with this story in it and that kind of thing. So I think people are catching on to it more and more. But I think you're probably right, because of the rash of superhero comics. They think more in terms of those being launched by comic book characters or graphic novel characters and that kind of thing. But again, on the first season of Tales from the Crypt and the DVD box sets, there's a really great DVD extra in there that talks about the the history of the comic book, from comic book to movies to TV, because there was a movie done of Tales from the Crypt in the 70s. It was like a creep show where they did three stories within one film, and Sir Ralph Richardson, the actor Sir Ralph Richardson, played the Crypt Keeper more of a distinguished version of the Crypt Keeper, which was kind of cool. And had some fun British actors, Patrick McGowan and some other neat people in those episodes. In fact, the Christmas episode, which was one of the first episodes of our first season, All Through the House, that Bob Zemeckis directed, was a redo of that one had been done in the 1970s movie Tales from the Crypt. So it went from comic book to movie to television back to movies. So it's kind of cool, and there's really cool. I mean, if you look at those comics, you go back and see any of the classic horror movies, slasher films, all of these different movies, how much they were influenced by the look and the the texture and the tone and everything from these comic books. They all came use those as their roots for it. So it's pretty amazing because they had some pretty great artists and writers and people with very interesting minds putting that stuff together back in the day.
Mm-hmm. So, the actual episodes themselves, were you on set at all for them, or when did you get to see the finished episodes?
It really all depended if I had the time. I mean, I was actually doing 2 other series at the time. I was doing Tales from the Crypt. I was working on First and 10, which was a series for HBO about a football team. I played the Bulgarian field goal kicker, Zagreb Shkanuski. And, the show had Chris Maloney was in that, from SVU was a quarterback on there, and Delta Burke was the owner of the team. It was her first series. And O.J. Simpson was the general manager. He was on the show. And there's a lot of different people that showed up on that show. And, of course, I got to meet all my football heroes. And then I was doing another series called FM for NBC, which was a really cool, series with Robert Hayes and Patricia Richardson and James Avery and Lynn Thigpen and some really great actors on there. So, if I had the time, though, I always tried to go down to the set as much as I could. I got to go down to the set when they were shooting, when Ernest Dickerson was shooting Demon Knight and see some of the really cool stuff that they were doing. And I got to go down to the set. I remember my parents were in town, and they had never really seen a movie or TV show shot. And I was like, come on down, I'll take you to Tales from the Crypt. And we went down, and they were shooting Death of Some Salesman, which those of you that know that episode, that was the one that Tim Curry was nominated for an Emmy for his work on because he played the mother, the father, and the daughter. And this creepy hillbilly-type family that Ed Begley Jr. shows up as a salesman trying to take advantage of them, and he played a ghastly-looking woman. 2 women. But he was shooting that to shoot it by character, so he was shooting, what's the name of the character now? I want to say Thelma, but that's not her name. I can't remember now, but the daughter. And so he was dressed up like the daughter, and I took my parents down there, and they were like, "Oh my God, that's a man." It just looked like a really ugly woman, but it was a lot of fun. And then if they were shooting the Crypt Keeper sequences and they needed me off camera to play off of whoever might have been on the set, Whoopi Goldberg, Arnold Schwarzenegger, or whoever may have been on the set with the Crypt Keeper. Rather than playing to 5 puppeteers working a puppet off camera, that was kind of like or just a soundtrack with nobody to play off of. I got the opportunity to go down and play off of them sometimes, so that was a lot of fun.
Yeah. When you mentioned earlier that you didn't know, kids were watching, when you kind of found that out, and then the Crypt Keeper really blew up, and you're doing cartoons and the kids' game show, and there was all kinds of merchandise and stuff. What was that experience like, and what did you think when you found out, it was so popular amongst kids? First of all, it was many years later than all those things that I found out how popular it was with kids, that there was a whole generation of kids watching it. When the show was on the air and we had come out with a cartoon and it was successful immediately, I was like, you guys should do a live action version of this, for television, for Saturday afternoons or whatever. Kids, we watched a lot of that stuff when we were kids, and it was really fun. Yeah. And I watched Twilight Zone and Outer Limits every Saturday with my dad, and they were like, no, we think it's going to be too scary. The kids, the cartoon's doing really well, and it's that kind of thing. And I, as a kid that got that kind of thing as entertainment and got the idea that it was tongue in cheek and fun, I quietly disagreed to myself that it definitely would be entertaining for kids. Of course, they came out with Goosebumps like a year later, and they were like, "Yeah, maybe you were right about that," But I think it was the idea of the Crypt Keeper because,
it wasn't until I started doing conventions that people were coming up to me and going, "Oh my God, you're the reason that I got into horror." I'd hear the Crypt Keeper I'd hear your voice from the other room, and I'd come running, and I'd see that creepy little puppet, and it would scare me, but I had to watch it anyway. It's kind of like, the roller coaster. You got to get on it. Face your fears on the roller coaster kind of thing. And, the stories I would get, they range from hey, my parents wouldn't let me watch it, so I'd watch it with my grandmother on the weekends, or, my parents wouldn't let me watch it if I didn't do my homework, or my parents, it scared me and my parents made me watch it if I didn't do my homework, that kind of stuff. But there's a lot of people that were like, my parents let me watch the wraparounds at least, and if the episode didn't look like it had nudity or, that kind of stuff, then they would let me watch it. And, of course, a lot of kids watch it on Fox when they cut out all the nudity and language and stuff. So it was, they got to see it on there. But, literally, I mean, that was the early days of HBO. So literally there were more people wound up watching this show, and there's a bigger fan base for it now than originally even had HBO back in those days. I remember when they were... the network executives were watching Tales from the Crypt in the audience when they were doing the screening of it for the premiere of it, the episodes. Somebody went, "Oh my God, this is great television," and somebody else leaned over and go, "This isn't television, it's HBO." And the execs went, "Ding," and that became their tagline for many years. It's not television, it's HBO. And literally, it was they overheard somebody saying that in the audience and watching Tales from the Crypt. And so that gives you an idea of what the, what the cachet of it was. But it's really a lot of fun to find out all the different stories of. I mean, people are passionate about this show. You have, I've been an actor for 37 years. I've been supporting myself as an actor. And, I could probably name you off 200 projects that you've never even heard of that actually had some success to them. And, within all the other hundreds of stuff that I've done. And, you go out there and you do those things. You don't know what's going to catch on. You don't know what people are going to respond to. And, when they said they were doing Tales from the Crypt as an episode, I thought it was just going to be for comic book collectors like me. I didn't know that it would be something so mainstream and have such a following. And here, close to 28, close to 30 years later, 28 years later, it's, people still are passionate about it. I have no doubt that it could wind up back on the air tomorrow and be popular with new episodes. The rights are, originally people were hearing that, TNT and M. Night Shyamalan got the rights from the comic book people from the Gaines family, and we're going to do their own version, which of course they would have been able to get the rights to use our puppet and me because ours was developed specifically for our version that we did for HBO. They wouldn't be able to get the rights to that. They would have to come up with their own version of a Crypt Keeper and all that stuff, but nobody wants to see that when it's so iconic, associated with such a great show that was done by the producers that I worked with. And so I couldn't tell you the exact reasons, but there were a number of reasons why the agreement and the rights didn't work out with them. So that's sad news on one level because we'd all love to see Tales from the Crypt as a property be used again. But good news for us because the possibility they may revert. They may wind up with us again, which would be a really good thing. So that would be an awesome thing. Whether it will happen or not, we don't know. But or I don't know. But I know that that's something that they would like to have happen, and it's just a matter of it always comes down to. The people who own the rights optimizing their situation. And to me, the only way to optimize your situation is to do it the way it was done. Nobody's going to do it as good as we did it. And it's already well established as to how you do it. And because the comic book dictated it to us, and we followed the comic book. So, there you go in terms of that.
There's a bunch of questions here on the Facebook page, so I want to ask a few of them anyway. Sure. Jason Mitten wants to know, what are some of your favorite memorable Crypt Keeper lines or puns?
Hello, Jason. Nice to talk to you. We're smitten with Jason Mitten. I always loved the term, "You're master of ceremonies." That was always a good one. There were a couple that I came up with over the years. I was just doing it to make people laugh in the studio. I love a girl who give you head and then let you keep it. Of course, they wound up using it like the next week, which was awesome. I always loved. I can't remember who wrote the line for us, but it was. Would you like to try my lady fingers? The delicious, although me lady was not so quick to part with them. Those are some fun ones for you.
Yeah, those are fantastic. I hope this is some type of in joke or something. John Dugan wants to know from the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, what kind of butt polish? Yeah.
What's that?
I'm good friends with John, so hopefully he didn't sabotage me. He wants to know, what kind of butt polish do you use?
Oh man, I think he may be referring to the oh my God, liquid ass. Somebody at one of the conventions, it was a slow convention, and they had set up the guys that set up the convention had put the Crypt Keeper pinball machine next to my booth so that the fans could play it while they were standing in line to come get autographs. And it was pretty slow, and it was to my right was Tom Savini, and just down the row from me was Kane Hodder, and a couple of practical jokers for sure. And every time somebody would turn on the pinball machine, it just smelled awful. It smelled like ass. I'm like, what the hell is going on here? Nobody wanted to stand in my line. Not that it was any people at this particular convention anyway. I'm like, what the hell is going on? So, of course, Tom Savini being a special effects guy, I'm thinking it's him. And I'm like, I know you did something. It turned out that it was Kane. He had come and squirted a bottle of some stuff called liquid ass into the pinball machine. And when it would heat up and start up, it would just like waft all around my table. It was terrible. It was but that was kind of like his version of an initiation. So, but I think that's what John's referring to. If not, he could be more specific.
Oh, very good.
Ass whack.
He also wants to say that he enjoyed having drinks with you and a bite in Calgary.
There you go, man. John Dugan's the best. We have a good time together. A lot of the people that we get an opportunity to go do that. It's a lot of fun. We really have a good time doing this stuff together. And mutual appreciation for for the work that we do. So it's an extra bonus. The people that show up at the different conventions get treated very often to partying with the different horror icons that are walking around, and it's we've had some good times over the years, and a lot of times they include some awesome music, and and it's a lot of fun. We all come to have a good time, and it is a good time. Everybody gets their money's worth,
Yeah.
I'm on my way to San Antonio for something called Rockula this weekend, and to see fans, and they're launching like a film festival and that kind of thing. And I'll be in Colorado Springs towards the end of the month, and then I'm going to be see you guys in Kentucky, which is always a real blast. Down
my first time in Kentucky, but yeah.
Say again.
It'll be my first time ever in Kentucky.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, no, it's a good place, man. It's a great place to hang. It's a really beautiful venue, and great food if you like comfort food. And there's some great places to eat, and some great music and fun people, and everybody comes really ready to have a great time. The promoters are awesome. Layla and the rest of the group are just really cool people, and we have a good time.
Very cool. And there's a lot of questions. I won't be able to get to all of them, so I'll save a lot of these, and if you have time, I'll ask them in Kentucky.
Great. Why don't you give me a couple more questions, and I'll give you a little hint of the other stuff that I'm doing before we get off.
Sounds very cool. Nick has a good question. Nick Hunt, has anyone ever asked you to do the Crypt Keeper voice under odd circumstances?
Yeah. To me, I think to me, any place that's not where we're doing Tales from the Crypt is probably an odd circumstance to want to do it.
Right. Yeah.
Obviously, I don't know. For some reason, some people find the Crypt Keeper to be kind of a sexy dude, and there's a number of ladies, young, old, and even kids that come up and go, "Hey, will you do the Crypt Keeper in my ear?" Of course, that's not real sexy with kids, but but it's certainly scary for them. Something titillating in a different way. But there are some people that just go kind of wacky when the Crypt Keeper, voice gets done, and it's kind of fun to have that, as part of my resume. It's good to know that's in my wheelhouse, right?
Exactly.
But yeah, here and there, it gets done. I mean, they made so many opportunities for the Crypt Keeper. I mean, we did everything from hosting the Halloween at a casino where you heard my voice all over the casino, to doing the theme parks, to doing Not Scary Farms and Universal, and hosting hockey game commercials. And when the Crypt Keeper was on the air, I mean, he was Bud Light commercials. They had the Crypt Keeper for the Super Bowl. He was "Are you ready for some football, creeps?" Which was a fun thing that we got to do. I don't know where that came from or why. I guess it was around Halloween or something, and they decided they wanted to have the Crypt Keeper do that. Crypt Keeper got to, co-host the Horror Hall of Fame Awards on television, and that kind of thing. So we were on the Tonight Show some years ago on Halloween with Jay Leno. It was Johnny Carson was still alive and still doing the show, but Jay was the host that night. And what do you slay, Jay? We had him on there, and it was a lot of fun.
Matt Orsman wants to know, what's your favorite part about working on Reefer Madness?
Good question. Reefer Madness was maybe one of the most fun things I've ever worked on in my life. I was approached to do Reefer Madness in L.A. in a small theater here where we first started the show, and I was like, Reefer Madness, and they showed that to us in school to try to scare us off drugs. It was like a 1930s movie that was really kind of, that we would laugh at instead of be scared by. But they were turning it into a musical, and I knew the creative team that was involved, and they were like, do us a solid, and we want you to help us create this character. We've created this character for you, and so we had a blast doing it in a small theater in LA, and it was an instant hit, and then the show was picked up to go to New York and open off Broadway. Sadly, we were in Tech, which is, a couple of days before we opened, 3-4 days or whatever before we started previews. September 11th happened in New York, which was not a fun time to be there, which bonded us very closely, the actors who were working on the show. I mean, obviously it was a horror to be there at the time, but wound up getting an audience of people that wanted to get out of their heads. They were in New York and wanted to come see it. Our theater was in the area of NYU, so we got a lot of the students and that kind of stuff coming to the show. of course, without tourists coming into the city, couldn't last very long. So we didn't get the run that we had always hoped to have in New York. And then, to our surprise, Bob Greenblatt over at Showtime, wanted to do it as a movie. He wanted to have the network put the money up to do it as a film. And so some of the original actors and some of the actors from New York, and then some new actors that were brought in, including Steven Weber and Alan Cumming, and Kristen Bell had done the show on stage with me in New York, and we got Anna Gasteyer, who was just incredible. Greg Nev Campbell, who had been involved in the show earlier on as a producer, but now came in to do a wonderful cameo and dance routine in the show with Steven Weber and Bob Torty and Christian Campbell. Just a really great cast. We had, when you're shooting the movie, it takes 3 months, like maybe around 3 months, because we get to rehearse and doing all that stuff that you don't normally do with a movie, but since we're doing musical numbers and all that stuff. So we pretty much had a blast shooting it. Andy Fickman was the same director I'd done it on stage with, and he's, gone on to direct, all these great movies, Race to Witch Mountain and She's the Man, and now he's the showrunner on the Kevin Can Wait series. So he's got a great sense of humor, and we just had a blast. It was maybe one of the most fun times I've ever had shooting anything up in Vancouver. You know how those people are up in Vancouver, the way they like to party. So it was a good time. That was a good question, because it's definitely one of the most fun things I ever got to do.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Well, Gigi Bannister also asked, did you have a good time in Scare LA? Her and Reggie could not get over to meet you, but they were there.
Oh, great. Well, give them my best. We had a good time over there. It was a really great group of people, and it was a lot of fun here in L.A. They did a really good job, and it was down at the convention center, so it was bigger and badder than ever. But, right now we're just, I'm finishing, I worked on the Planet of the Apes movie this year, doing a bunch of apes, and did a bunch of stuff for Despicable Me 3. I work a lot for Illumination, or Secret Life of Pets, and Be a Good Boy, Leonard. A lot of people don't know I'm Leonard's owner. But the Emoji Movie, I'm the Slice of Pizza. There you go. But a lot of different fun things that I got to do this year. And right now we're in the middle of launching a great project called Mystic Cosmic Patrol, which in August is going to launch onto
Funny or Die.
Funny or Die.
Mm-hmm.
And I play the voice of a robot called Martini Bot, and he's basically been reprogrammed just to make great martinis. It's kind of like, this is a really fun kind of kitschy show, making fun of, it's like a mixed media of comedy, martial arts, and sci-fi adventure. It's parodying all those programs like the Power Rangers and Voltron and Ultraman and, Kamen Rider and Star Trek. And it's a blast. It's they like to call it nerdtastic. I mean, definitely the kind of show you would want to dress up as the characters for Comic-Con kind of thing. So
yeah, I saw the trailer. It looked very funny.
It's very funny. They did a great job. It reflects the genre in terms of its style and budget and everything. So we had a blast. I had a real blast working on that with those guys.
Yeah, very cool.
So there you go. That's all the shit that's fit to print.
Well, how could people follow John Kassir so they can keep up with what you're doing?
I always, I got the full 5,000 there on Facebook, but please follow me because I put everything up there. And you'll be able to still, send me questions and follow me in the same as if we were, friends. I don't know why they differentiate between people who follow and friends. I should turn it into or do a fan site, but I like to keep it personal. So I've kept it a friend site all this time. And as a result, there's a huge line of people that have wanted to get on it with me, but obviously Twitter
And both of those are just under my name, John Kassir, JohnKassir, and you can find me on those. Instagram, I don't use it as much, but I post some fun pictures up there, and always love to hear from you guys on that. It's really fun because people send me fan art of the Crypt Keeper and pictures of their tattoos and, them dressed up as the Crypt Keeper on Halloween and that kind of stuff. So that's really kind of cool.
Very cool.
So those are the best places to get me.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate you coming on. It's been awesome.
My pleasure. And, don't lose your head.
Thank you very much.
All right, man. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Take care, Neal.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Liam Regan, and I'm the writer and director of the horror comedy Banjo, and you're listening to Without Your Head.